Oh boy.
Oh, there's the boss.
Ah, yes.
Looks like he's got his Superman shirt on.
Who, me? No, I've got my Flagler Beach, Florida shirt on today. Just got sent it in the mail.
No, yeah.
It arrived today, so I'm sporting my Florida colors today. Hello, everyone. Hello.
Hello, hello.
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 Hey, Mike, how are you, sir?
Hello, Mabel.
Mike, how are you? I think
Uh-oh.
sound. Okay. Wasn't sure if your microphone was picking you up, Mike, but let's do a check with you. No? Going good. Okay, Mike, can we try again?
Don't have you.
Can you hear us? Oh,
I think he's going to sign back in and try his sound again.
good idea.
Steve, Mabel, Larry, how are you guys?
Good.
Doing good.
I'm in good company tonight.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Kipper.
There.
Florida, how are you? Blessings.
Yes.
Looks like Tina's trying to get in here. Tina Gonio.
No, she signed off on her video. I think to go eat, but she's listening in. I think.
Right, okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Hey guys, can you hear me now?
Yes, Mike, we got you. Hear you well and good now.
All right.
Oh, where's Mike?
Okay, now I'll take my seat. Oh, Mike, thanks for joining us tonight. Should we?
Well, thank you for the invitation.
You get rid of this Bible.
We look forward to doing this. We've still got some virus issues here in Costa Rica, and so we don't get out very much.
Pretty bad there?
It is pretty bad, actually. Yes.
You know, we were on with Jay Dickerson a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And Nancy, we had him on, but you know, it seems like from between what they share and we keep our eye on it the best we can. It seems like Central America and South America has taken a pretty good hit.
I heard today on the radio that Peru is one of the worst places fatality-wise per capita in the world.
Yes, Peru is a horrible scenario right now. They're talking about not even opening till maybe next summer.
Is it because of the humidity? Is that?
You know, they were said to be one of the best prepared and still taking the hardest hit.
Yeah. So someone asked me, what's the difference? And in Central America, the difference is that we just don't have as many hospitals that can take care of you as you might in the United States. And when this whole thing started, Costa Rica only had 27 public ICU beds in the entire country.
Wow.
So, but they've done the best that they possibly can. So we're grateful for God's grace.
Mike, are we live with you in Zapote?
I'm just on. Now you must know somebody who knows somebody, because how would you know Zapote?
I actually, I attended the school there.
You did? When did you study here?
I was in 2015.
No kidding.
Yes, sir.
Oh, well. We're living in the same director's house that everyone was living back then. You must have been under
Denny.
Under Denny, yeah.
Denny and
So,
Debbie.
Yeah, Denny and Debbie, right?
Yes,
Sellers.
sir.
Yeah.
Great couple. We had
Introduce
a great
introduce
fellowship there
your
at that
client.
time.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, had a great fellowship there at that time. Great group, great directors, and chance to spend a lot of time with Jay and Nancy, and we enjoyed every bit.
So introduce me to your team here. I got to see a few names.
Great. So you're Mike. You're going to see a few come in a little late. There might even be a few that may need to leave early, but it's sort of a come and go crowd. But
Mhm.
as it appears on my screen, start with Steve.
Steve?
We've got Steve. We've got Kipper.
Hey, Kipper.
Blessings.
We've got Mabel.
Hi, Mabel.
Aye.
We've got Larry.
I,
Hi,
Probably
Larry.
accompanied by his wife next to him.
she's actually finishing up supper right now.
Okay.
She'll be in
There's
eventually.
myself, Michael, and then we have Tina on the bottom right for me.
I don't want to hold
Hi,
it.
Tina. It's nice
Hello.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank
So
you.
we always get a few. If I say 6, Mike, I think we'll get a few at 6:20. I suppose. Well, so hey, we love doing this with our missionaries. I have a few lighthearted questions to start, but then we generally ask a lot of the same 3 or 4 questions, and we'll go through those tonight. And it's really all about you guys and sharing in such a way that we can get a feel for your story, your call, your testimony, and what kind of work you're doing there. I will start off, and we do this almost every week when we do this. We started many weeks ago, sometime early on in the COVID, and we wanted to open up the door so that our missionaries were still able to get in churches.
Mm-hmm.
Said we still had some missionaries and visitors come in because we were able to move it by God's grace out of the church and into a drive-in, which was it was a neat experience, very unique. But we
Okay.
have missionaries every week, so we're somewhere in the ballpark of now on maybe 14, 15 weeks in a row with different missionaries in different areas of the world. Last week we were with a team from Vanuatu under Area Director Brian Webb.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks ago was Brother Jay and Nancy,
Sure.
and we've got you guys. And so I think we've probably 1 in every 3 seems to be from LAC. And so we love this. It allows us to spend some time with missionaries, be encouraged by them, still allows them to get connected with our churches. At the end, we always send in a little offering for our, just even out of the Zoom time here, we send in a little offering for our missionaries that we Zoom with, and extend the invite to them for when they're in the States or if they're there now to come and see us as they're able. So,
Well, thank you so much for the invitation, and I appreciate you allowing me to get to meet some of your people and to participate in this great idea. So,
Mike, we're in what we
You're going to,
country. It's the uppermost part of New York, not far from the Canadian border.
mm-hmm.
Just outside the Canadian border, between us and them is the St. Lawrence River, the Adirondack Mountains. We're sort of squeezed somewhere there, right in that vicinity. And the invitation's open. We're enjoying a good fall right now, beginning of fall, and I think that'll last until we get hit with about 6 to 7 months of winter, and that's coming soon enough. But beautiful outside today. It looks beautiful where you are.
It is beautiful where I am, but I know what lake effect snow is all about. I'm from the Cleveland area, and my wife and I, we love watching that snow machine work. It's magic.
We like watching it from a distance.
Yeah.
How many here have snow blowers? Steve does. Larry's got one. Mabel, you probably.
yep.
Kipper and I, we don't need one.
When I was younger, I had 2 snow blowers right here. I had a.
Yeah. Well, I had one, but my wife refused to learn how to use it, so I got rid of it.
I was into it though when I was younger. I enjoyed that stuff.
Yeah, so Mike, you're in Costa Rica right now, correct?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay, great. And how long are you into your itineration cycle, or does it really ever end as a director there?
Well, we're 1 year into our missionary term, and we are not doing this year what we did the previous 23 years.
Okay.
And so this is a brand new life for us, because we came out of Mexico after 23 years and moved into this ministry that is just a whole new ballgame.
Wow. There's a great group of Mexico missionaries. We haven't connected via Zoom with them yet, but just a few from. So I have a background with LAC, and some of them just really served as great mentors, earlier on. And so you have 23 years in Mexico, you said?
23 years in Mexico. Yeah, we raised our kids there. Our daughter was born there. She's a legal citizen of Mexico.
So some of us might have to practice our Spanish with you. Which is interesting, because we're definitely excited to hear that tonight, Mike. Before we get into kind of our traditional 3 or 4 questions and then turn it over to group discussion, comments, questions at the end, which is how we do it. You haven't only been 1 year into the itineration cycle, but having a heavy set of cycles behind you that you're familiar with being away. Some of the lighthearted questions are, what food do you tend to miss when you're out of the States?
Oh, well, that's an easy one. And that is that my family has a 60-year tradition of making their own salami and kielbasa in my mom's garage. 60-year tradition. And when my dad passed a couple of years ago, that kind of slowed down. And oh, what I wouldn't give for one of my dad's homemade salamis. Yeah.
It sounds like our version of our Krogan bologna.
Oh, brother, it feeds the soul.
Larry, do you have any comment on Krogan bologna?
There's not much left is all I can say.
See, Larry was supposed to save me some. I was going to come have a bite with him. And he told me today it's not going to last too long.
Well, yeah, there might be one slice left there. So
You pick it up from the meat market?
yeah, I figure if you do show up, we'll take a ride up there and show you where it's at, because you've never been to Eddie, so I'll take you up there.
We've got some, meat markets and different interesting places to get our meat around here.
So my family has this tradition that literally is 60 years. And my mom and dad, my dad passed at 84 years. They would buy upwards of 300 or 400 pounds of ground pork shoulder, and then have this honkin' table that they would keep in the garage. And they would grind this 300 pounds. And then 6 or 7 of us men would get around the table and mix it by hand for an hour. And it didn't pass until either grandma or my mom did a taste test. They had just the right amount of garlic and paprika. And until they said it was ready, we just kept mixing. You don't even talk.
Great memories, I'm sure.
And no one's picked up the practice since your dad died?
Well, we did it 1 more year, but I can't explain it. Without Dad, it's just not the same. And of course, I'm out of the country, so I can't be a part of it.
Yeah.
But the last thing I asked for my mom before we left, I said, Mom, give me the recipe, at least the mix. And I tucked it in my wallet, and I have it here in Costa Rica with me. And one day I'm going to make it myself right here. So there are traditions that keep the
Costa
family
Rica, do you
together.
prefer to get your meat, Mike?
I'm sorry?
So where in Costa Rica do you prefer to get your meat?
Well, there's a place not far from here, and they call themselves, believe it or not, they just call themselves the meat store. What a name. And I showed them the recipe and they said, we can make it, we'll make it exactly to your recipe, but you're going to have to order at least, I think they said 10 kilos. So that would have been about 25 pounds. And then the virus hit. And the whole thing changed. So.
Well, I love that place. I love that place where you are. We're certainly looking forward to just kind of building an ongoing relationship and a partnership with you. You know, when we were there, we saw different ways that teams were able or people were able to really bless the school. One of the summer intern students, he owned a pretty big paint business in Orlando and kind of over $1 million in assets. And he came down because he leads trips throughout the year for Big Faith Fellowship Assembly in Orlando. But owning the business, most of his workers were from Central America, and he wanted to be able to communicate with them and
Sure.
effective with them. So I don't know if you guys are still doing the summer programs. Are you, Mike?
Well, we've kind of adapted it to carry over because now we I don't know how it was in 2015, but we carry the new missionaries that are here for the entire year. We carry them into the beginning of August. And now what we do, obviously with the virus, everything is virtual, but we now offer intensive programs where you can study 1 or 2 hours a week, or you can study full time. And we currently have, the Lord gave us some creative ideas so that we could keep the school open. We're one of the few schools open in Costa Rica. We actually have 92 students registered to study to begin Spanish next Monday.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think our class was 17.
Well, you're right. And we just graduated 14 adults and 5 children last month. And then we were told, well, no missionaries are coming, which means no rent, which means half of our income is gone. So I could either lay all my teachers off, or we began to seek the Lord. And I said, Lord, since that has always been a blessing, there's got to be a way we can bless and keep the doors open and not lay our teachers off. And he just began giving us ideas. I think we have over 30 homeschoolers in the United States registered. They're studying. And we have 18 full-time missionaries that are studying now. And we have 42 veterans that all signed up for classes, including Jay and Nancy. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Yeah.
Learning never stops.
No. So I actually have an idea that I haven't started yet, but this might be up your alley. And that is to begin offering churches that take missions trips, offer them 10 weeks before they travel, a 1-hour course every Wednesday night where they can study as a group from church on Zoom for an hour from 7 to 8.
It's a great idea, Mike. In fact, outside of serving full time with AGWM, we've led a lot of trips. I'd say most trips of mine preferably are in LAC. You know, when I leave, LAC still has my heart. I formerly served in Peru.
Okay.
We don't let anyone go on a team unless they do at least the minimum basic greetings and basic conversation.
Yeah.
They're not just able to go, but to build some sort of cultural connection, language connection, so that there's something there. Even just to be able to say a few words goes a long way with somebody that you're going to minister to. So I think it's a great idea. To tell you right now, we have tentatively, everything I guess is kind of tentative right now.
Exactly.
Tentative Antigua trip. We have a tentative Cusco trip off for next year. Had a few so far for the Amazon that have been pushed back. We had a summer one for the Amazon pushed back, and that likely, again, we just talked about Peru. I don't think that's gonna.
Yeah.
They're just getting hit so hard.
Yeah. Cusco's a toughie.
Yeah. So, majority of them predominantly in LAC. And so I think it's a great idea to just out of this call to have that connection to be able to do that with the team.
Yeah.
And be able to utilize that beforehand. And the hope, I think, for some of them is that it would carry on beyond that.
Mhm.
Thought we might have one of our youth, a recent high school graduate, Larry, you're familiar. I asked Jordan to come on tonight. But Jordan has been talking about the possibility of going down there and weighing out the consideration, even just for an intensive, to kind of feel if the Lord's leading him in any way to do that. But I don't see him on the call. That's okay. Hey, so let's go from there. Favorite fast food that you miss when you're out of country?
Sure. I would say probably Chick-fil-A.
Mhm.
And I love those waffle fries. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he said the same. Chick-fil-A.
Last week, the Vanuatu missionary said the same.
The same. Yeah.
And a few of us here have never had it. You know, we're about an hour and a half from the nearest one, so I know that makes us martyrs for the cause, we said.
Martyrs. Amen.
So
Yeah, those things are addictive. They really are. They ought to be outlawed. But
they're good. Mike, what do you find that I know your heart is there, and there's no doubt in that in terms of family here and 20 years ago life here, aside from itineration cycles, what do you find that is your most enjoyable aspects of coming back to the States when you're here?
oh, without a doubt, it's reconnecting with my elderly mom and my siblings. They're all in Ohio. And of course, I have 4 grown kids now in the States. I have 2 sons. They're married. They're pastoring in Ohio, and another son who's in Springfield, Missouri, married. And my daughter is now at nursing school at Evangel. And so I absolutely love spending time with them. And quite honestly, my favorite place is to go to the beach somewhere, maybe the Carolinas, or go down to visit my in-laws in Florida.
Mhm.
But for us, it's all about family. I can't help it.
Good. Thank you for sharing. And Mike, so first question right off the bat, tend to ask everyone, but we love the different answers that we get is number one, between yourself or yourself and your wife, share a little bit about your background in the church, whether you grew up in the church, whether you didn't, just a little bit about your testimony.
Sure. Well, I can do that without making it go too long. Our family had the habit of going to family camp every year in our district, and that's where I was saved. In fact, I brag about it. That's where I was saved. That's where I was baptized in the Holy Ghost, and that's where I had my first kiss, and that's where I was called into the ministry.
It all happened there, huh?
So the family camp had a great impact in all of us, and we have lifelong relationships with people even today that we did at camp. And it was there that I sensed God calling me to the ministry. So when I graduated from high school, I went straight to, at that point, it was Bible school to Southeastern, and came out and began as a full-time youth pastor, the traditional story, where a couple of years later, I met my wife, and then we moved into full-time ministry. We moved into a senior pastor position, a small church right on Lake Erie. It was a great experience for us because I have immigrant parents who taught me one way to see life, and then our church members there in little town of Vermilion, which is near the amusement park called Cedar Point. I don't know if you've ever heard of Cedar Point. The entire church was from coal country in Logan County, West Virginia. And they taught me how to love and be faithful and stick up for each other. That just changed my life. But after 6 years, my wife and I began sensing that we were to go to missions. And I was invited to go on a missions trip with 50 pastors to the former Soviet Union. And I did that. And it was there in February in St. Petersburg, Russia, where we were passing out free Bibles to people in a bread line. that I just received a very clear call. And I said, God, if you want me to do this the rest of my life, I'll do it. And so we accepted the call. Within several years later, we had resigned the church and accepted the challenge to move to Mexico, where we spent 10 years working with an unreached people group that are called Old Colony Mennonites. And they're very similar to the Old Colony Mennonites that are in the Ontario area, just around the lake from you guys. And we spent 10 years there learning their dialect called Plotich, and bringing the gospel to a people that at that point had very, very little knowledge of the scriptures. After 10 years, go ahead.
I didn't know that there was any Mennonites in Mexico.
There are about 120,000 Old Colony, the old conservative Mennonites in Mexico.
Wow.
And
I was going to ask, when you say old colony Mennonite, would that be the same as Amish?
they actually consider the Amish to be too worldly.
Really?
That actually, I actually had a man tell me that. I actually had a man tell me that the Amish are too worldly because they wear beards, and that's a sign of pride. And any man with a beard must be a proud man. And you can just imagine. Here we were, my wife and myself, and 3 young children. And then our daughter was born in that environment. But wow, we saw God in so many powerful ways. We had cartels around us on every side, and yet he would open so many doors to witness in people's homes and to lead people to Christ. It was just an experience I would never trade for anything else. And we were actually the 6th generation of Assemblies of God missionaries to go to that place. And all 5 previous generations preached the gospel and then got sick and had to be evacuated. And we were the 6th generation to get sick and have to be evacuated. And that's where I suffered my first grand mal seizure. And I was never able to go back there again. But if you go to YouTube and you just simply put in the blessing and then you spell out Plotich, you will find that there are now spirit-filled Plotich believers all over Latin America, including Mexico, Bolivia, Paraguay. And God has poured out his spirit upon those people. And it's because there were 6 generations of AG people who said, look, we'll do it. And God has moved. It was a tremendous experience. But because of that, because of my epilepsy, our area director wanted me to go to a place where there were more missionaries. At that point, we were completely alone out there in the desert of Western Mexico. And they moved us to Southern Mexico, where we began working in team and preaching the gospel among the Zapoteco Indians in the mountains. We were there 12 years. And after the 12th year, the 3rd term, my wife and I began praying. We sensed there was a change coming. And one day God spoke to us and said, I'm going to place you where they need missionaries with a pastor's heart. And we just held on to that. We came back to the United States. We went through missionary renewal in Springfield. And Dave Ellis, the LAC director, walked up to me one day and said, Mike, there's going to be an opening, and we're looking for missionaries with a pastor's heart. You consider it. And my jaw just dropped open. I said, oh, yeah. Lord, the exact same words. And then he got back to us about 4 months later and said, there's an opening at Sincel, and we want to know if you guys would consider it. And we took it. And now we've been here a year.
Wow.
So,
well, Mike, to back up just a little bit to help us fill in the gap, after your Russia trip, was it not long afterwards that you were in Mexico, or was there something specific in the Lord's dealings with you guys that highlighted Mexico in particular?
Well, there was a 4-year gap because when I got back, my wife agreed with me, but she said, I also have news. She said, I'm pregnant. And we decided, all right, maybe we shouldn't resign the church exactly right now. And our third son was born. We stated to stay on a couple of more years. And then when we went to AGWM, we applied, we said, we're willing to go anywhere. Anywhere. My wife actually speaks Hungarian, and I have a German background, so I have a working knowledge of German. We were going to go to Eastern Europe. And that door closed so fast. We're like, Lord, come on. My wife speaks Hungarian. I speak German. What do you have for us? And that's when the superintendent of Mexico wrote John Bueno in Springfield and said, we need a couple who has a working knowledge of German and kind of understands a European background. Would you consider?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Perfect fit for you guys. Amen.
Yeah,
And a clear call.
yeah, it was a very clear call. And like I said, we were the 6th generation to go there. So it really wasn't about us. The Lord just was so persistent. Let me just say this. The Lord was so persistent in his love that he would send missionary after missionary after missionary after missionary until the wall was crumbled. You know what I'm saying? And that just got in our gut, that the Lord never gives up. I mean, his grace said, we're going to reach these people, and I'm just looking for faithful servants.
Wow.
And I don't know how to express this to your folks that are on with us tonight, or even you as a pastor. And I don't even know the history of your church, but you know, the Lord his love is so persistent that he might be dealing with someone when he's a young man who just refuses to give in to the Lord, but he will work with that man and deal with that man and send people to that man even into his old age. And that's what I think a part of the everlasting love of the Lord is. It just keeps. And we were the 6th generation of AG missionaries, and finally the wall fell. I apologize for being. Yeah.
Wow.
The walls of Jericho, huh?
Yeah. And
When you were telling that story, that's what come into my mind is the walls of Jericho. And like you said, when God has a plan for you, I think I mentioned this to the church on Sunday, if I remember right. I told them that God has a purpose for each and every one of us, and we need to step out into that purpose and just let our light shine. I didn't say it that way, but that's what I was getting at, is just step into your purpose and let your light shine. And God's not going to let you go just because you want him to. He's going to keep tracking you down like he's the best bloodhound in the world. Let's put it that way.
exactly. That's a great analogy, bloodhound. They'll just keep coming after you. And I mean, obviously, today is the day of salvation because we're not promised tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not that foolish to think that he'll give us an unlimited number of chances. But in the case of these people of Mexico, oh, the suffering, brother, the suffering of alcoholism and violence, what do you call it? Domestic violence in these communities was so hard. And can I give you an example, or you guys go on to the next question? We had a prayer team come from Pittsburgh, PA. It come down. Our area had suffered about 7 years of drought, and a team came down. A young man, Ken DeChant, is his name, and his wife. They were newlyweds. And so we divided everybody up, and we recruited a local church to join us, a youth group. And we sent them out into these villages to do prayer walks. And the only rule that I put in place was don't talk about anything except pray. And when you come back, we're all going to explain what it is that God showed us in these prayer walks. So we sent them out into these different villages, these dusty streets. And when they came back, we said, what did God show you? And every one of those small groups said, God was letting us hear the cries of children who were being abused by their drunken parents, by their alcoholic parents. It blew us away because we had no idea the extent of alcohol in that community. But as we began dealing with parents at that level, you wouldn't believe how many people day after day, they would just open up about the violence that their family had suffered because of alcohol abuse. And it was a bondage that was broken. And you see, God just wouldn't give up through the work of his Spirit. And that's why I just am convinced that no matter what community, the bonds can be broken. And I know people say, oh, this is a rough place. You know what? Prayer and the power of the Holy Spirit can break those chains, and I'm convinced of that.
So Mike, not to get off topic, it's a great aspect of your testimony and call there. A lot of things to dwell on. You got some of us really worked up on that one. John Bueno, back to John Bueno a moment. Had you ever got a chance to meet John Bueno?
Oh, yes. Yes, when we went there.
What was some of your experiences with John Bueno, and maybe tell our folks here who John Bueno is?
Well, John Bueno started out as a missionary to Central America, and ended up as a missionary planting a church that planted many, many other churches. And he and his wife ended up becoming area directors for Central America, and then at one point ended up becoming the directors of world missions in Springfield, Missouri. But my impressions of John Bueno is that he was such a positive man, and he was so focused, and he just absolutely believed that with faith and the power of the Holy Spirit, anything could be accomplished. And I can't say that I knew him real well, because, obviously once you leave the country, you're out of touch with a lot of people. But John Bueno was a pioneer in Central America. And when we met with him and we told him our background, he said, Mike, he said, the superintendent of Mexico has written us, and they're looking for a missionary that has a background with European speaking people. And you just seem to be the right couple for that. Would you at least pray and fast about it? And I remember that exactly. I remember that so clearly, because we were in a hotel room and the Cleveland Indians were playing the Seattle Mariners in the divisional playoffs. And I had to turn the game off and go pray and seek the Lord. I remember that. So carnal, Mike, I'm so carnal. I'm telling you. I mean, it's like,
I take it he's not a Yankee fan.
Go ahead, Larry.
oh no,
I was going to say, I take it he's not a Yankee fan.
Oh no, I hate the Yankees. I hate that. No, I hate the Yankees. I mean, imagine the Bills in the playoffs and the Lord saying, Pastor Mike, I want to speak to you, but so turn the game off. And it's like, Lord, can I do that at half? No. And he spoke to us that night, and we laugh to this day, because my wife, when we began this missionary adventure, she said, I'll go anywhere except 2 countries. She said, I'm not going to go to Ethiopia, and I'm not going to Mexico, but I'll go anywhere else.
The old adage is don't tell the Lord where you're not going to go.
I'm not. I am.
Yeah.
Some people think that's their ticket to get to the place where they're really trying to go. Lord, I won't go to Peru. Send me there. No, No, so I bring up Mike, I bring up John Bueno because of his exampleship, especially to the missionary community, to us, here at our churches. His name may be known, it may not. He's also written
I've heard
some
his name several times.
great books, but he was just a living example for missions work. Him and chalk it up with others, Melvin
Steve-
Hodges.
Steve, do you recall, has John Bueno been here to speak before? I thought,
He's on mute.
oh,
I don't,
sorry to interrupt.
he doesn't sound real familiar, but that doesn't mean anything really.
I was just curious. I thought he might have been here.
Now, Mike, we'll take it to the next turn. You've left Mexico. By the way, did you serve with the Chasms at all?
Are you kidding? Paul is one of my best friends.
I figured.
Oh.
There's got to be camaraderie there when you're in the same nation. Paul
Oh,
and
no.
were some of the
We
first
talk-
missionaries we ever met.
We talk every 2 weeks, Paul and I.
Beautiful.
Every 2 weeks. I just
Yeah,
talked to him.
It's a small
Yeah.
one.
No, he's Paul and Sandy Kasem. Actually, Paul and Sandy Kasem were our area directors for a couple of years in Mexico, and our last couple of months in Mexico, they came down and they spent time with us because our state of Oaxaca suffered an 8.2 earthquake, and the destruction was horrific, and they organized doctors and nurses from around Mexico and spent time with us in the mountains, working with us and Convoy of Hope. But Paul Kasem is a brilliant man, and if you can, they're actually back in the States right now on itineration. They're in California, and they would, if you need a prime speaker for a convention, they're great people.
They were the one of the first missionaries we ever met, and at mission school, having no supporters yet, they were our first monthly supporters. They said, "We want to show you encouragement. We believe in you guys. We're going to pick you up."
Oh, that's sweet.
Just a great examples to be, a baby missionary, and you got veterans out there who have done some great things for the Lord. And so I figured you knew them. Hey, by the way, this is Randy. I don't think the camera's facing him, but
Hey, Randy. Nice to meet you, buddy.
I told you they'll come in at any hour.
What's he doing with those steel legs?
He said, "What are you doing with those steel
I
legs?"
figure your back must be.
Got some problems with my left knee and got a lot of arthritis in it. So there's after surgery, they say that follows it. And it just got really, really bad. So I went to the doctor and he put me in a wheelchair and said, "You're going over to the ER." So I went to the ER and they did some x-rays and told me what it was and gave me some shots and gave me some steroids and some other things, some ibuprofen, 300 milligram of that. And I'm here.
But you're here.
I'm very coherent. I know what's going on. We're not thinking about those Jimi Hendrix songs. We're doing okay.
Hey, Mike, you moved from Mexico. Now you're in a very interesting role. It's very different compared to the typical missionary assignment. And a lot of what we hear, every story is a little different, but the missions work may involve children's ministry, it may involve church planning, it may involve underage people groups. But here you are, very unique mission. Tell us about directing the language school in Costa Rica.
Well, I got to tie up what your buddy just said about Jimi Hendrix. Paul Kasem is an expert on Jimi Hendrix, by the way. If you ever invite Paul Kasem to come and speak at your convention, you got to get him alone for an hour to talk about some of those great guitarists from the 60s. He'll do it. Anyway, but all right, we're back on topic here. Where was I? Oh yeah, language school.
We're along the watchtower.
Yeah. So language, well, of course, language school, every new Assembly of God missionary from the United States who goes to a Spanish speaking country has to come to Sincel. There's no, it's obligate. You have to go. And so for almost all of them, this is their first missionary experience where they're actually living outside the country, aside from maybe a shorter MAPS assignment. And so you get a lot of young couples and singles that they're all crazy. I mean, they're just totally pumped for missions, and they go through the process and they raise their money, and then they don't even want to go to language school. It's like, oh, I don't need language school. I'm just going to go to Cusco, Peru, and the Lord will give it to me. Well, it doesn't work that way. Something happens in language school where you're reduced to a sniveling, snotty 5-year-old kid who can't.
Please tell us what happens at language school.
Who can't even tell the taxi driver where you live. Because, we preachers, we make our living with our mouth, and all of a sudden you're reduced to nobody. And you get here, and life is not what you thought it would be. And especially if you've got kids and your kids are learning faster than you do.
Wow.
And all of a sudden you realize, I'm not sure this was the right call. And now you've got these people for a whole year. When we've got incredible professors, really. And you know that. You probably remember Karen Suarez.
Oh, Karen's the best professor
Yeah.
language I've ever been around.
Mick Bell and Dejanira, bless her heart. And Dino, probably with the administrator, and Alba, our
Almost
cleaning.
janitorial.
Yeah. So they're all still here. And but all of a sudden you're living in this apartment and you're studying a language full time, and you realize I'm called to preach the gospel in another language. And I'm not going to do that until I learn to speak that other language. And now all of a sudden the heat's on. And dude, you know what happens when the Lord turns the heat up on us? Everything that's inside of us that shouldn't be comes out.
I thought you might get into good detail about that.
Well, I'm sure that didn't happen to you.
No, not at all.
But that's what life is like. And all of a sudden, all these wonderful missionaries, super spiritual people, they yell at their wives and they yell at their kids and they hate to study and they gain 10 pounds. I don't know what it is, but then you know what? They settle in, and all of a sudden the words start flowing, and they're part of a local church, and the grace of God begins covering them, and then little by little they're talking about Jesus. And by the time they get done, they preach their first sermon, and you say, wow, God did a great work in your life. But so we get to be their pastor with a missions heart for the entire year. And that's why somehow the Lord in his glory said, you know what, I'm going to take you out of the mountains. It's time you start working with these younger bucks.
Right, and essentially, Mike, that's really where we were hoping to gain some transparency tonight, because while it holds, seemingly the title of a director of a school, of a language school, you yourself are a missionary, and the role there is very pastoral. So we've been on calls with area directors, and we've had to hear the pastoral.
Yeah.
But you're not only running an institution, may not necessarily be the church, although you have chapel services. But if you don't have this institution, as you said, these missionaries that are young and ambitious and zealous to go to their countries, hoping to learn so quick, if they don't have this little layover, I want to say, it steals and strips them of the success that they could have in those countries. So you're not really just a director, but you're a missionary and you're a pastor of missionaries that tend to spend, what do they spend with you, Mike? Maybe 3 months up to a year, and then maybe come back again, some of them?
Well, 3 months is the minimum, and those are the ones, the MAs who only go to the field for a year. And then those who go for 2 years have to spend 6 months, but those who go for 4 years, 3 or 4 years, and they have to spend an entire year with us. Because a lot more is expected of those that are going to go for 3 or 4 years.
Mhm.
But the point is this, Pastor Mike, that no matter what stage of life you are in the Christian life, you always need people around you to hold you accountable and help you grow. And whether that's a missionary or a veteran missionary or a real old missionary, or whether that's a pastor
That's
or a
right.
church, we all need people around us to walk us through, because the Christian life was never meant to be lived alone.
That is so true.
So Mike, even there, Brother Mike, your doors are probably widely open, not just to direct the administrative affairs and make sure that the operation is running smooth. But can you share with us maybe what it's like for some of those MAs? When we say MA, that's missionary associate. Like Mike said, maybe they're going to the field for a year or two. So they have shorter language school assignments. Well, what are some common things that you have to in your spiritual care with your missionaries there? Some problems you have to work through that are very common for the traditional family that comes.
Oh man, what a great question. And I got to be careful that I don't say too much to where I end up talking about somebody you know.
It may be.
So let me give you a couple of really quick examples. Let me give you an example of a young couple with no kids.
Mhm.
A young couple with no kids, they got a lot of energy. They want to go out and discover, and they want to not only language, but they want to see Costa Rica because it's a beautiful country. But all of a sudden, the young lady starts having some health issues, and she needs to be under doctor's care. Well, they've worked 2 years to get to Sincel, and you just can't pull them off the field. So she goes to a doctor, and she has an issue, and they give her medication, and a month later, it hasn't cleared up. And a month later, it hasn't cleared up. And all of a sudden, now they're talking about doing a medical procedure and minor surgery in a country where you don't even understand the doctors. At that point, that couple has a choice. We're afraid to have any kind of surgery in Central America, so we're going back to the United States and we're quitting. Or we're going to take a step of faith and just trust God for health. And you go to the hospital with them and you sit there with the young man in the waiting room until his wife comes out of surgery and the doctor comes out and tells you how he did because he doesn't understand the doctor. That's real life there, buddy. Let me give you another example. A young missionary with small kids has experienced pastoring. And you know what it's like. Pastors, okay, now cover your ears, Mike, but pastors have a way, they get really used to telling other people what to do.
And now they can't.
And now they can't. And now they're being told what to do, and they're being told that, you know what? You're not moving fast enough. The rest of your class is ahead of you, and you're going to have to work harder. So what do? You're frustrated. You miss your church. You thought you were the boss. And you know what you do? You take it out on your kids. You take it out on your kids that are still elementary school. Oh my goodness. Well, those kids, they don't deserve that kind of, you're the baby, not the kids. That's a very common scenario.
So you've eliminated the picture for us that the missionary experience at a language school is always so
Upbeat.
you're with other missionaries, you're enjoying life, you're in a
Costa Rica.
tropical country, and it's all good. You're writing the newsletters home, I'm learning a second language or a third language. You've kind of wiped that picture out for us, because the reality is for many, the pressures are so great having the transition from low and great positions in the States to now your speaking capability is less than a 3-year-old for the better part of several months. And and it creates contentions with other missionaries. Tell us about the name a little bit. There's, if I'm not mistaken, there's a history behind the name.
The history behind the name? Well,
Cincinnati, or the
okay,
Chisel.
well, the name itself is each letter stands for something, and it literally means the Center for Studying Culture and Languages. And when you put all the letters together, the name is Cincel, and cincel is a chisel, and so it's a place where God is working on you.
Ouch, that hurt.
Doesn't feel good.
I know what it is.
And you know that when you're
Chink,
no,
chink, chink.
no, whether it's a wood chisel or a sculpting chisel, you know it. You know what it does? Have you ever heard the old saying? You remember who was that? Who was the great sculptor? They asked him, "How do you?" He says, "Well, I just cut everything away that doesn't look like my picture." And that's exactly what God is doing. He starts cutting away everything that doesn't belong there. And that hurts. Man, that hurts. And that's what he's doing at Cincel. And
Okay.
well,
And I'm thinking about the
Go
young
ahead.
lady that had to have the surgery. I don't know if I'm doing that in a foreign country.
Or having a baby. Larry, some of them are coming with babies, and they knew that. That's what they signed up for, but it starts to get uncomfortable real quick when you don't know a language.
Mm-hmm.
right. We just graduated a couple. They got pregnant while they were there. And now they actually made it to Ecuador in place of the entire, even though there's a pandemic. They just got to Ecuador. She's 8 months pregnant. And man, and not to badmouth anybody, but I'm telling you, some of these younger couples, they're brave. I'm not sure I would have done that.
We had
but
two
then-
little ones under 3, and the Lord packaged a new one there at that school and delivered her shortly after graduation as we just arrived to Peru.
Really? Well, congratulations.
Thank you. I was telling my wife yesterday, I said, she's kind of part Tica. Tico is a term that they use there. You know, if you're a native to Costa Rica, you're Tico.
Right. Right.
So my wife said, no,
those are
she doesn't qualify. She was only packaged.
Those are issues that people deal with. Yeah, I'm sorry. So,
Oh, go ahead, Brother Mike. I'm sorry. There's just a small delay.
no, so those are issues. You know, you've got a dad who's frustrated and all of a sudden he's got a temper and he takes it out on his kids, or you've got a young wife who has got health issues. And then you've got another, you got a young man who leaves his girlfriend behind in the States, and, you know, he really feels called of God, but man, you see a picture of his girlfriend and she's a knockout, and you know that guy, every time he picks up his verb book, he's thinking to himself, I could be in the States with my girlfriend. But he sticks it out and he's persistent. So,
Mike, tell us, at Cincel, you don't just teach the language, but tell us about the whole other aspect of what Cincel outside the spiritual, because Cincel does chapels and you're required to practice preaching in Spanish, you know, for certain levels, but what is the other aspect of language, and how is that so important in the process as you're preparing them for their countries?
sure. Well,
And some examples of how you integrate that.
Yeah, that's a great question, because really what we do at Cincel is what a lot of churches, well, what every church and anywhere you live in the world, that's part of the Christian life. And it's this. At Cincel, we not only learn Spanish, we learn what we call six other competencies. Let me just tell you what real briefly, and I apologize for the terminology, but one of the other talents that they have to learn while they're at Cincel is to learn how to solve problems in another language. How do you solve problems in another language that you can't speak? So let's say your car has an issue. How are you going to explain to a mechanic what's wrong with your car if you can barely speak the language? Or are you just going to use hand motions, you know? Or when you get to your country, let's say like you guys went to Peru, and the national church there says to you, oh, we know that you came to this country to work with university students, but what we really want you to do is we want you to go up in the mountains and work with those Indians. And you're like, wait, what? I just spent 3 years telling everybody that I'm going to work with university students, and now you want to send me up to the mountains in the middle of nowhere to work with people who, like, how are you going to respond? Or what are you going to do when, how are you going to solve problems? How are you going to work with other people in team that you can't speak to? How do you handle your money when it takes a whole day just to pay your electric bill?
Wow.
What are you going to do when they come to your house and shut your electric off because you didn't pay your bill when you did pay your bill? You know, well, what are you going to do when your 5-year-old has 103 fever and you've got to go to a hospital and you've got to try to explain to them? And you're worried about your child, but that's pretty serious.
Wow.
You got
The way that we
you gotta-
do things is not the way that it would operate in Latin America, correct, Mike?
Well, those are the things that happen in Latin America. And so you've got to learn how to solve problems, and you have to learn how to work with other people, and you got to learn how to deal with health issues, and you got to learn how to handle your money. You know, what do you do when you go to an ATM machine with your bank card from Chase Bank and you're in Peru and you put your ATM card in to take out money and it swallows it? And you're standing there like without a dollar to your name, and you just said kiss goodbye to any hope of having any money in your pocket. What are you gonna do?
Can I show my hand as one of
No,
those
you
good
did,
people?
yeah.
About everything you mentioned?
Wow.
That's me.
No.
Yeah.
So Mike, Sincel is really, it's important for them to prepare them for life and to prepare them for culture. How do you incorporate culture into the school too in preparing them for life beyond?
Well, culture happens. There's no way you can learn everything you need to learn in one place in 1 year.
Mhm.
Impossible. But what you do is you try to teach them to pray through things, and you try to teach them not to overreact and not to panic. And you try to teach them that no matter what situation they're in, they're still in the middle of God's hand. Can I give you a quick example?
Absolutely.
I was leading a men's Bible study in central Mexico with the old colonies. In the man's house, there were about 8 to 10 men there. And I was preaching on Romans and being free from the power of sin. And I just so happened to mention that so if you're an alcoholic, or if you're a drug addict, you can be set free from these things. And everyone went home, and I was getting ready to leave. And the owner of the house where we were doing the Bible study came up to me and said this to me. And he said this to me in Spanish, but this was an old colony Mennonite. He said, you don't realize, but a lot of men in our Bible study, they work for the cartels. And if you ever talk about drugs again, you'll be dead before you get home.
Oh.
You know, they didn't cover that at Sincel, Mike.
No.
You probably
And,
didn't speak about it again either, huh?
And I got 3 little boys and a little girl over there at the house. And I'll be dead before I get home. And that's the guy who led the Bible study. I mean, that's the guy who invited us to do the Bible study. You don't learn that at 1 year. But I tell you what you do learn. You go through Sincel and you realize that no matter where I am, God is still with me.
Yeah.
And that nothing's going to happen to me that is beyond his control. And you learn lessons like that. And at Sincel, you just start wading in the water and you hope that when you get to your country and those kind of things hit you in the face, I should say punch you in the face, you don't throw in the towel and give up. So I hope I kind of explained what starts happening at Sincel.
Wow. No, I think it's
I can see,
pretty
I'm
clear
seeing
picture.
Sincel as it's a place where faith is tested very, very deeply, huh?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's an important place with God. To be able to teach his children. And show
That's exactly right.
Wow.
You know, many are about to embark on a journey of doing missions work. And I think as you shared your story in the States, you said all the things that you were going to do, you know, going to do this for the Lord. And you're zealous, but you don't realize in order to fit into that nation as best as you can as an outsider and to not only speak, but to communicate with the people, that you yourself have to be cut away in all the areas that need to be refined before he sends you.
Wow.
And it's one of the most humbling processes a person of faith can go through.
And it has to be that way, doesn't
And
it?
it has to be that way.
Yeah.
It can't be any other way.
But guys, it's nothing happens in Sincel that shouldn't be happening in your own church, because church is there to help sanctify us.
Yes.
And I wonder how many people through the ages, when they left their church, what they were really just doing was trying to get away from the surgeon.
Yep.
So let me encourage you that allow church to be that place where God is sanctifying and molding you, just like he does missionaries at Sincel.
I think a lot of people leave, like you said, before the surgery is over, and they go out of God's will, and they're unhappy for a long time until they get back into it. If he's not moving you, don't move.
Yeah. So, well, I started this conversation with 100% battery, and I don't know what it is, if it's this end or that end, but my battery's almost drained.
Before Mike is gone from us via battery or you know, a sincere departure, I want to, any questions, comments for Mike before he heads out or battery dies?
No, I think he covered everything pretty well.
Makes you want to go to language school, right, Larry?
Oh yeah, I'm right on that.
Larry, we got
Say that again.
We got a special class just for you.
Oh yeah, I belong in the special class.
Special class.
How about anyone else that's still on the phone?
Thank you for your faithfulness, Brother Mike, all these years.
Yeah, that's something I don't. It being so family oriented, I am too. We are. I don't know if I could be away from my family for 23 years like that. And I realize you come back and forth a little bit, but I'm sure there was many times where it was years and years without seeing family.
Well, I don't have the battery to go on with that. But of course, when you love your family, you miss them. And just because you're doing God's work doesn't mean that you don't feel the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Matthew 19 says, anyone who has left mother or father or lands or fields or sons or daughters for my sake will not fail to receive 100 times, both in this life and in the life to come. And so it's a call. You don't turn down a call, you answer the call, and that's just part of the price of the call. But the Lord, he has ways to pay that back in greater ways when he says, I'll give you 100 times in this life and in the one to come. So, hey, Mike, I do suppose, you might lose your battery. So, hey, we want to tell you that we love you. We're encouraged by your work tonight. Hopefully this is not the last call. We'd like to get you on a repeat call in the months to come. Invitation stands. If you're back in the state, consider us one of your churches you're able to visit. And if there is any tangible means in time, treasure, or talent in which we can offer ourselves to you as Calvary Assembly in Carthage, New York, to the language school or yourselves, I don't know what it's like, but you do. Let us know how we can do that, whether it's supplies or prayer team, short-term teams, anything that the Lord may speak to you. But reach out to us. We want to be a go-to church.
Well, I appreciate that invitation. I'm going to take advantage of it right away before my battery dies. Tell me who the contact person is. How can we get you on our email list or our mailing list, our communication list? Who's that person?
Mike, that'll be myself. So I'll send you in our chat box, I'll send you my email.
It's right on the screen there, Pastor Mike.
Is it? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, use that one right there. I'll send it to you again. And anything you send me, I'll print out for our folks and make sure that it's passed on to them.
Okay, if you could send that to me because it disappeared. And besides, those letters are so freaking small.
You got
I couldn't. And then my wife will add you guys right away. And
that's great. Hey, Mike, thanks tonight. I want to just say thanks for your time, and we honor you and we appreciate you in the Lord. So have a good night, and thanks for the call with us.
Thank you, Pastor Mike, and thank you all of you that joined in. It was fun. I appreciate it.
Got it. Thanks again, Mike. Have a great day.
Mike,
Nice.